Good morning, John Sanders. How are you?
I am terrific, Mr. John B., and I
Good to
take it
know.
you are also.
Yep, I am.
Life is good. I'm looking out on the ocean. It's still throwing waves at our beach.
Yeah, is it overcast or foggy
No,
there?
it's pretty well gone. It's still, you could tell it's been there, but it's
Yep,
pretty well gone. Sun is bright on the waves. They're
yep.
white caps.
Nice, nice. So your subject today is girls were also tough 100 years ago. How would you
Yep.
know? You're not that old.
I'll tell you, my topic is based on my mother and my mother-in-law, both of whom graduated college 100 years ago.
Oh, really? Oh, this is
Yeah.
fascinating.
And it's fascinating. And as the more I thought about it, the more they have affected me. Of course, especially my mom, but
Hmm.
in some of my thoughts and attitudes and actions and so forth. They were tough girls,
They were tough
and
girls.
I won't say ahead of their time, but in some sense they were.
Mm.
Uh, and My mother went to Georgetown College in Kentucky, and ultimately became a trustee of the school later on in life, obviously.
Really?
And it was a Baptist school, Southern Baptist, of course, in the time. I
Hmm.
don't know what it is today, but it's still around. And most of the Baptist schools have kind of dwindled down their religious aspect. But hey, Baylor University was a Baptist school, and they just won the NCAA men's
Yep.
tournament.
Yep.
When I was
Yep.
growing up, that was big time, the Baylor. So they've sort of their Baptist nature has sort of drifted away a little bit. But in
Yeah.
any case, my mom grew up in Kentucky and was born in LaRue County on about 20 miles from her great 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 grandfather's farm where Abraham Lincoln was born.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and in fact, you go to the Lincoln farm, and that's was his property 100 years or 200 years ago. I don't know, whatever it was. I
Yeah.
guess it's at least 200 years because he had to get Lincoln there, and he's been around. He's been almost 200 years. So, but then her family moved to Louisville, where I
Hmm.
was born, and she went to Louisville Girls High School and then on to Georgetown College, and she majored in mathematics, which girls didn't do 100 years ago. So when she graduated, she taught school and ultimately in Shepherdsville, Kentucky, a suburb of Louisville, about 40 miles outside. And that's where she met my dad, who was a highway engineer. And he was the district manager for the Kentucky State Highway Department.
Hmm.
And they built roads where there wasn't roads. There weren't roads in the 1920s in Kentucky. There were some old dirt roads and so forth. And when I was growing up, he had 1,000 stories about the farmers he dealt with and how he built the roads. And one of the best ones, I got to get off on my dad a little bit, but one of the best ones was he was a highway engineer building US 60 going from Louisville to Frankfort to Lexington ultimately. And they got to the county line of Jefferson County into Shelby County, and the the differential in the road was about 8 feet from Jefferson County line to the Shelby County line. So he was not supposed to go over the line.
Yeah.
So what he did was he moved the line. He
He
took the
moved the.
post and moved the line back about the whole 20 yards or so, 30 yards, planted it down there, and then he had the road smooth. So many years later, when they built the Brent Lawn trotting track there, and it was right on the line. Went on both sides, and so they came to getting the liquor license,
Mm.
and their bar was in the wrong county. All right, Shelby
Mm.
County was dry, Jefferson County was wet, and therefore they couldn't get a license. And I don't know how the story goes. Obviously, it's a long time ago. And so the man across the street, Bischoff, who happened to be my law and surveying teacher in high school, said, "There's one person you call, Wallace Sanders, who was director of works at City Louisville at the time, and he can give you the story and solve your problem." And so they got to him, and he said, "Well, I have to admit, I moved the county line 40 years ago." And if you go back to the records, the county line is where you think it is, right in the center, right on, and your bar is actually on the right county. and he got them their liquor license.
Wow. Wow.
My my dad, when he went to get something done, it got done. All
Yeah.
right. Damn the torpedoes full steam ahead.
Yeah.
Anyway, my mom taught mathematics in Shepherdsville,
Uh-huh.
and the two of them. It was interesting. My dad was Jewish, my mother's Southern Baptist. Those two didn't meet very often,
Right.
even though the Jews are background to the Baptist, obviously. But they had the same viewpoints of life. And my dad's family and my mother's family got along famously.
So what was the viewpoint that was similar?
The treatment of human beings and how you deal with life and what your attitudes are in life and what your goals are and how you treat people along the way. There was absolutely no difference. And you could put them in a setting and conversation, you couldn't tell the difference. So I grew up in that environment of dealing with people on the basis that they want to be dealt with. And but I respected my mom all the way through. She was tough. She'd set her mind to things, and all the years I grew up, there was never a cross word from her. Never a cross word. Now, part of it was because I was a good boy, I'm sure, but and my
Is that
brother.
is that your end of it or hers? Would have been hers, you
I'm
think?
sure she thought I was good. We treated her well in later years too.
Nice.
And you know what's interesting is another thing. Right after the war, a young man that had grown up in our neighborhood was an orphan, and he stayed with a Baptist preacher that lived about 3 or 4 blocks away, and would come by our house and got to know my mother and dad, and my mother and dad got to know him. Then he went off to the Navy in World War II. Came back after the war, or my dad got a call from him late one night, and Steve said, "Mr. Sanders, I'm out in Wyoming at one of my Navy buddies' place." And he says, "I'm out of money, don't have any money. And I've got 30 days to join the Navy back again and get my rank or lose it forever. I don't know what to do." And my dad said, "Well, why don't you just come stay with us for a while?" And so he came and he lived with us for 5 years. And my dad got him to get his trade school, his electrician's license through the trade school, through the technical school there. He got him to Campbellsville College, which was another Baptist 2-year college. He met his wife there, his first wife. She died suddenly later. But and he had his daughter during that time. He wasn't living with us at the time, but while the first wife, whose daughter, who's absolutely fantastic, who has three children and 13 grandchildren. She's something else. And I come from a good family, let me tell
Yeah,
you.
you do. Yeah, you do.
So but they recognized each other's, even though my dad weighed 300 pounds and my mom weighed 120. So, but she was 5'7", he was 5'8", so they were pretty much the same height.
Yeah.
So life was good. We grew up in a middle class neighborhood. In fact, everything was middle class. There was no rich.
I know. It was a
poor.
very strong middle class back then,
Yeah,
right?
the rich folks are in the other end of town where the golf course was, and so Steve ultimately, what's interesting is ultimately when my parents got older and started having real mental problems and so forth, they went to stay with Steve and lived with him for about 2 years, because my brother was in Iowa and I was in Washington D.C., so we weren't close by. And you know what I thought about? What goes around comes around. He paid him back for taking care of him when he did, because they changed his life, and he wanted to pay him back. It was good. It was an interesting thing. Now let me tell you about my mother-in-law. People joke about getting along with their mother-in-laws. I got along with my in-laws absolutely famously. My father-in-law was a peach grower in the center of North Carolina in the Sandlands, where nothing else grew but peaches. He told me I'll tell you that story later. So, she grew up on a little farm in eastern North Carolina. The Sandlands was in the central, near what is Pinehurst, the Gulf territory there in
Yep, I know
North Carolina.
Pinehurst. Been there, actually.
My wife was one of the first babies born in the Pinehurst Hospital, back when it was owned by the Yankees. And
Wow.
not 100 years ago, but 80 years ago. So I don't think I'm old until I realize I got an 80-year-old wife. So Oh,
Yeah, but
forget I said
you guys are really young at heart.
we are. We are having a ball. And just took a golf lesson yesterday, and I can't wait to get on that course this afternoon and try it out. But so she grew up in a small on a small farm in eastern North Carolina, truly in the sticks, and went to college at Meredith College, now Meredith University, of course, in Raleigh, which at the time was a Baptist girls' school. After she graduated, I think she got her teaching. Everybody got a teaching certificate. She got that, and she also did stuff in textiles. She loved sewing and working with materials. And she went off to graduate school in New York City to Columbia, central New York City. Country girl from North Carolina. Tough.
Wow. Yeah.
And got her master's degree there. Then came back to Raleigh and opened a modiste. Modiste.
I have no idea what that is.
It's a women's haberdashery.
Oh.
It's a French term. Term for women's haberdashery. And she was doing well until the Depression came along in the 1930, 2930, and put her out of business. Just there was nobody buying. So she went back to her teaching and got a job in Candor, North Carolina, about 20 miles from Pinehurst, where she met my father-in-law, and they married, and my wife and her two sisters were born there and grew up there. But Mrs. Ewing was tough, and she, they worked the peaches. She had to work the the stand, selling peaches on the highway. My wife grew up doing that stuff with her sisters, working the peach stand, and he was a very successful peach grower. What's interesting, later on he sold some land to a company that wanted to build a golf course and resort community about near West End, about 10 miles from Pinehurst, about halfway to 10 miles from Candor, about halfway to Pinehurst. Well, been 10 miles from Pinehurst too. So they came to him and said, because his land separated their property from the main road, and also the entrance road came through his property. So they had to own that land. It became a nice little shopping center, but they wanted to own that so that they didn't have problems between them and the road. And they came to him and said, "Okay, we want to buy it." And the peaches had died out, so he wasn't. There was no. He wasn't growing on the property. Doesn't do anything with the land. And what the book's on the shelf behind you there, John?
Well, boy, we just chunk sideways. One is a book by Brene Brown called Dare to Lead.
Yeah.
The book on the other side is Donald Miller's Building a Story Brand.
Yeah, and then that's an award in the center.
It's the award in the center for my 2020 Champion of the Year, the highest award given to anybody at the Carlsbad Chamber of Commerce.
Whoa, that's pretty good. I'm impressed.
Yeah,
Pleasure doing business with you.
Yeah.
So anyway, they came to him and they agreed on a price. I don't know what it was, $2,000 an acre, $1,000, whatever it was. And then they said, "So what kind of terms have we got?" He said, "Terms? It's cash. It's the only way I deal." He never owned a credit card. Of course, they didn't do it those days so much anyway. Cash in, cash out. That was his business. And so ultimately agreed that on whatever the price was per acre, 2,000, whatever it was. This was like 1967 or so. I was just new to the family. We married in 67. So he said, "All right, here's what you do. You've got, for this year, your price is $1,800, whatever it is. Buy all the land you want at $1,800 an acre. Next year, we'll settle on another price. And when you got money, come and buy land." And it took them about 3 years, but they bought all the 200 and something acres. So it was a good deal. It put Mr. Ewing with real cash in his pocket for the first time. So,
Love it.
but it's interesting how hard they worked.
Yeah.
My mother and dad. My dad was a city employee for most of the years after he left the highway department. In fact, during World War II, he worked for a private company, and he was a chief engineer on the synthetic rubber plant in West Louisville. And to use synthetic rubber in World War II was big because you couldn't get all the rubber,
Right.
So he was the chief engineer on that. And then he went to work for the city and stayed with the city for 16 years. All the years I was growing up, he was the director of public works and chief engineer for Louisville. Built the flood wall, built the sewers, roads, you name it. He knew.
And all he had to do is move a few county lines to get some things done.
There's one story where he was going the Cherokee Park, which was the big park in Louisville. US 60 came in from the east, from Lexington and cut through right around Cherokee Park, a little right at the tip, went down this little tip and came back and went all the way through the city. And he said, that's ridiculous to force that to go around. He said, we're just going to cut a road right through it. Well, that was the prime property in Louisville, and the neighbors all objected to doing that. And so he decided it had to be done. He couldn't keep that, having to force all those roads go down that little tip. And he said, we could take that tip and put a tot lot there, put playgrounds. So one week, he lined up the chief judge of the city and said, all right, I'm going to do this. I don't want you in the office Monday morning in the courtroom, because they're all going to come in screaming, get an injunction. If you're not around, you don't have to deal with it. And so he lined up all the equipment up the road, up the streets on both sides, away from the property. And on Saturday morning, they came roaring through, cut the land through, put the curbs in, the sidewalk, put the asphalt in. The road was done by Monday morning. When all the neighbors went into the judge, he says, "Oh, what do you want from me?" When they got to him, the road's done. There's no injunction. It's completed. You can't stop something that's been done.
Yeah. So, well, like you said, he was just like a get it done kind of guy.
Get it done. Is it, this is right? This is what ought to be done?
Yeah.
Got it done. So they went to the mayor, and the mayor, who was Farnsley, what a character, said, "I'm not going to get in the middle when Mr. Sanders says something ought to be done. I'm not going to challenge him." So anyway, that's the kind of guy he was. It's kind of people I grew up with, and I had great respect for women in business and women in whatever they want to do.
And you still do, John.
I've got, of my 7 investments in Carlsbad area, 4 of them are women.
Yeah.
And good ones too.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are.
Well, my philosophy on women, because when I ran a newspaper in D.C., let's see, we sold it 1996, 25 years ago, had it for 10 years. And I was the chairman and CEO and the major shareholder, not at the beginning, but when it was over. I kept buying more shares and we issued more and so forth. I put a lot of money into it for my day. But I loved it. God, it's fun. The newspaper is fantastic. No wonder Jeff Bezos bought a newspaper.
Oh, yeah, Wall Street, yeah.
It's still the old statement, never argue with someone who buys ink by the barrel.
I've never heard that, but I like it. Yeah. Yeah.
So in any case, I hired mostly for my salespeople for advertising. I tried to hire women, girls. They were in their generally late 20s, early 30s. Attractive, not beautiful, attractive. So when they met somebody, he wanted to talk to them, you know? But I also felt the following. I said, when they deal with women want to support women. So they have much higher opportunity of getting the business woman to woman. And men want to be mothered because they remember their mother. And I always used to tell these young ladies, I'd say, listen, when you go and this guy ought to buy an ad, you don't ask him for the ad. You tell him this is what you ought to do.
Yes.
And I said, the odds are he will agree with you.
Yes.
Because he remembers his mother telling him what he ought to do.
Yeah, listen and obey. Exactly. So this, you kind of wanted to do this when we started talking about doing this episode. You were talking about Mother's Day, which is May 9th, and today is actually April 9th. So we're clearly a month ahead on it, but we'll still get it out there, you know?
Well, here at Carlsbad by the Sea, our new activities director has come to me. He says, we want to do these videos about your mother for Mother's Day and have a series of them here. I said, I don't want to do that. Just forget it. And then I got thinking about when you said about doing a podcast this morning. I said, you know what I'll do? I'll just combine the two things and I'll do my preparation for that little segment by doing the podcast.
Yeah, good. Well, this is video recording. It's going to be on the audio podcast, but it's also going to be on YouTube.
Good. Well,
so,
I'll send it to them and they can edit it out. How long have we been running? 19 minutes?
19 minutes and 33 seconds.
That's long enough. I'm sure they'll want about a 5-minute segment.
Okay, well,
I can do that.
Yeah, well, they can show whatever portion they want.
Yeah, I could do 5 minutes. We rambled a little bit.
Yep.
As we usually do.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. Do you want to redo a 5-minute section after
No,
this?
I'll just because they're going to record it. I'll do it with them.
Okay, good. Well, great, John. What are you doing this weekend? Let me guess. Golf?
This afternoon,
Uh-huh.
and with my wife and a good friend who's had his tea time, and his partner's dropped out, so we dropped in. Tomorrow I
Nice.
have nothing. I'll probably watch the Masters.
Yep.
And on Sunday we have a tea time, and I have invited our golf pro to go with us and play. So I
That's
don't know whether
nice.
she can do it or not. If not, I'll get my daughter-in-law and son to go with us.
So, John, what do you think of this thing about Tiger Woods crashing his car into the tree or whatever at 85 miles an hour in a 45-mile-an-hour zone? What's your
Well,
take
the
on
interesting thing
Tiger?
about
He just seems out of control. Is that
my
about?
daughter and her husband live about half a mile from that spot in Palos
Wow.
Verdes, Rancho Palos Verdes. And they said, you're coming down that hill, you lose control on. You can't not go fast coming down that hill. And
Uh-huh.
if you're not used to it, you will speed. Period.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to be very careful not to speed coming down there, and
Mm-hmm.
making those turns. They're very tough. And if you're going over whatever the mileage is, I don't think this. I think the speed limit's like 40 or 45.
It was posted 45
Yeah,
where he
yeah.
was.
And that's too fast. It's just tough. So it's a
Yep.
winding. If you've been up around the Palos Verdes, around that road, everything, it's going around the
Sure.
hill and winding.
Yep.
And it's a section that goes straight down and
So he just never put his foot on the brake and kept
never
going
put his
and,
foot on the brake.
and lost control.
Lost control.
That's
I don't know.
interesting.
I think he's at the point now where coming back this time is probably impossible. But they said that
Yeah.
last time too. So
Yeah.
he's an amazing young man. He's 47, I think now, isn't he? He's
I,
hitting 50.
yeah, thereabouts. I don't know.
That's
but
the
that sounds
tail
about
end of
right.
golfing prowess.
Right.
So anyway, I never was a long hitter, but my golf pro, who's a woman by the way, got me doing some stuff yesterday in the thing that I'm excited about changing. They're very simple changes, but they brought some real long distance and confidence to me.
What kind of change did she have you do?
Believe it or not, the first thing golf pros do, they get your grip.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the thing? Change my grip, get me a stronger grip.
A stronger
then-
grip.
And then, you watch golf at all?
I do sometimes.
Justin
Yeah.
Thomas, you see Justin
Yeah.
Thomas bring his club back. She said, do that because that gets you in the attitude of moving your shoulders.
Mm.
Because if you just start with your arms, you're in trouble. So
Yeah.
get that first move, and that'll do it. And then you got to pull through, and you got to bring the follow through on a round.
Yeah.
So it's basic stuff. We all know it. The
I know.
question is
Good for
doing it.
you. It's like I'm sitting here going, "How does this apply to life?" Well, it kind of does. It's like it sounds like what you're saying is put your whole body into it, at least your shoulders.
If you want to be a winner, you got to put everything into it.
Yeah, I get it. Yep, I get it. Get it. All right, John. Well, have a great weekend.
Same to you. What are you doing? Anything special?
I worked most of last weekend, and it was a problem this week because it was just, Sam and I both worked last weekend, and I saw him yesterday, and I just said, no more weekends. We just really need some rest because this week was really challenging trying to get stuff done because we're so tired. Got to have a weekend off, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
All
it's
right.
for me. It's going to be a beach walk.
There you go. Come by our place tomorrow.
I may. I'll let you
Go
know
rock
if I.
up. Give me a call on the cell phone. I'll invite you in. We'll have a drink.
Okay, so what day? Which of those days are you available in the morning?
We got nothing planned tomorrow.
Okay, good. We'll see. But I'll give you a ring.
All right.
All right.
Take care.
You too. Bye.